vacation there.
Yeah.
I'm much happier I took train rides than the airplane. Like, I'll say that first. But
the one airplane available?
yeah. But, just for, like, my own little peace of mind, I was like, these train rides were, like, 16 fucking hours on a train. So just for my own little peace of mind, I figured out an approximate similar distance in Japan and checked on their train stuff, and it's like 7 hours shorter for them for about the same distance.
Well, yeah, but, like, that's Japan.
Totally, but I'm just sitting here going like, God dang, 7 hours is almost half the trip I took. Like, that's a lot better.
No, it is. But there's also, I imagine, not as horrible lobbying for inefficient travel for the sake of keeping the infrastructure and maintaining it in place.
Yes.
Like, California has talked a lot about installing, like, a high-speed rail from basically NorCal to SoCal, and I'm sure that they would extend that line if it were successful. But it can never be successful if it never is approved, so... I'm sorry that your train ride was not so good. What did you do?
I mostly watched YouTube videos on my phone and did bad jobs trying to sleep, because I don't sleep very good while traveling, generally.
I feel like if I spent more than 3 hours on YouTube consecutively, it would drive me mad, just because, like, I'd run out of things that I was wanting to actively watch, and I would just be, like, crawling down a horrible algorithm of gaming icebergs and God knows what else.
Well, lucky for me, about twice a week there is a Netrunner stream that I can watch that's around 3 hours long, so that I saved those up, so I had some Netrunner to watch, which helped.
That's profoundly you, Neil.
It sure is.
I gotta say. But yeah, it's been a while since we recorded. We have to acknowledge that.
We do.
Neil actually came all the way back to the area that he used to live and where I continue to live. And we hung out for a little bit, and I was like, you know what? Last time you came over, we sat down, we used a lot of that time to record an episode. And this time, maybe let's just, relax and have fun. So we did that instead.
Yeah, we went mini golfing.
We played a little bit of mini golf.
It was fun.
Yeah, I've played a lot of different mini golf games, and there's still just enough charm in the physical act of hitting the little ball that it felt good.
Yeah.
Of course, it was attached to an arcade, so there was also video games. We didn't spend a ton of time with them, but, we made the most of not a lot of time, I think. I mean, I had a good time. You had a good time. It was for your birthday, by the way. We should probably say that.
Happy birthday, me. I'm continuing to grow old. Oh, God.
Yeah. What's the alternative, right?
I don't know. Stay young forever. Like that 80s song.
You should have did that then.
If only I could go back in time. But hey, everybody. Video games, hello. And welcome to the Audio Games Podcast. I'm Neil.
And I'm Matt. Video games, hello. That's we're sticking with that.
Just because we took a small hiatus doesn't mean we lose our catchphrases.
Yeah, that is the catchphrase. Well, it's been a month. There's been a lot in the news. There's been a lot of time to pick up some games. I know that there is at least one big one that we have both been playing, and probably deserves a significant amount of time, as we are veterans of the series, and I am confident in calling you a veteran at this point, because I feel like you've had enough to complain about when I talked to you earlier about it, which is the marked sign of a veteran of the beloved, now very popular Monster Hunter franchise.
Do we want to jump into Wilds first? Is that what we want to kick off with?
I think that we need to at least give ourselves all the time that we need to talk about this, because I have a lot to say.
Okay, yeah. The short version for me, I like it. I also think it made some fairly significant steps backward.
Yeah, yeah. Just to again zoom out a little bit and give it some greater context. Wilds came out like a week and a half ago, I think, 2 weeks ago,
Sounds about right.
and it was the most successful launch for a Monster Hunter game, and is showing that the franchise is growing. You know, it's mainstream now. There's no denying that. It had, I think, 8 million units moved within the first 3 days of the release, and was peaking around 1 million concurrent players, which is humongous. That's an enormous
Yeah.
amount of players. And I could verify that by looking at my friend list and seeing a bunch of people who I've never seen play Monster Hunter before suddenly playing Monster Hunter. Now, the issue with that, and I'm coming from my very own unique perspective, which I guess is not that unique considering a lot of people share the sentiment, but as a consequence of the game becoming more mainstream and popular, it's gone through some changes. And the first time that this really occurred, at least in terms of how I felt about the game, was Monster Hunter World, where you picked up the franchise, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the design choices and thoughts behind them and the motivation to make the game what it was keeping in mind that this franchise is continuing to grow and that there's going to be a bunch of people playing it that haven't necessarily played other Monster Hunter games. So I imagine that if you're a new player, you look at Wilds, the newest entry, and you kind of assume that for the most part, this is what the game has been. It really isn't. It's changed so much now. I mean, obviously, I have my feelings about how much has changed in World, but I also grew accustomed to a lot of the streamlined and convenient changes that they made to the series. Um, I could get into the specifics about what changed back then, but I think that it's important to focus on everything that's occurred in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how you want to do this, Neil. I feel like we should probably start off with like all of the worst stuff and work our way towards the good stuff, so that we leave the conversation feeling optimistic and good about it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, I must say the thing for me that really stands out about Wilds, especially after Rise, is it is extremely a sequel to World.
Yes, it is
Uh,
extremely.
it is a sequel to World in some of the worst ways and in some of the better ways. Uh, but it is also a sequel to World in some ways that I had hoped would be slightly more different, especially given what I had heard about the amount of change some weapons would go through between generations, and Wilds is the next generation. It is the sixth generation instead of the fifth, like World was. Um, a lot of the weapons pretty much play like their World counterpart.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I'd agree.
I don't necessarily think that's bad. I just, in some specific cases, feel like I was hoping a little bit more change on some of the weapons.
Well, I
Um,
think that when you think about changing to the weapons, I know that they put into place several new systems, I guess you could call them, or
mhm,
mechanics that kind of apply to all the weapons in different ways. Like, you have offsets and clashes and stuff.
sure.
And those are all new, and they apply to weapons in different ways. But is that a change to the weapons themselves? I would say that the core gameplay is pretty much unchanged.
Yeah.
Um, but like that's not a problem for me. I mean, I think I've played like 7 Monster Hunter games at this point, and when you do make changes, as someone who's played a lot of the games, I feel those changes profoundly.
Mhm.
So, I don't really need a lot of change in that regard to make it feel relatively new, and I don't even necessarily want it to be new in that way. But I have a very long list of things that I liked and didn't like, having spent time crawling through low rank to
Hmm.
finish what is essentially the story heavy tutorial of Monster Hunter Wilds. Um, and if we're starting with the most negative aspects, the thing that I really want to talk about is how ass the online is.
Yeah. This is maybe the biggest step back. World had a lot of issues with playing with your friends. And Wilds, despite trying to turn this into a way more open thing, having these lobbies that can have way more people in them, so theoretically you can run into people like out in the world while you're running around, that doesn't really seem to happen because it is so rigid in how it allows people to join quests with each other.
Yeah.
Uh, and
And it's not
even
just
then,
that.
our first night when we were trying to play a get together, it took us what 15 minutes to even figure out how to get into the same lobby, only to find out, oh, even in the same lobby we can't see each other for like a random hunt.
Yeah, so I think this is the main and my chief complaint about the online is that there's so many layers stacked on top of each other, and it's not clear what things actually affect what you're allowed to do with online. So, just off the top of my head, you have squads, which are like, I guess, guilds, where you have like these separate lists of friends. I don't know how that works. I haven't engaged with that at all because it seemed like you didn't really need to. And then you have link parties, which I guess are like the the group that you're actively working with. And that is the most important one because that's whose missions you see posted once you join the link group. And then you also have the lobbies themselves, which are kind of like the instances, but they're kind of also not like the instances because even if you're in the same lobby, you don't necessarily see the same things. You just kind of share the same space, kind of like ghosts, I guess. And if you think of like Mario Kart, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You have like this ghost status, so like it's just showing you where players are. I think more like Elden Ring would be a good example, actually. Um, you can kind of see where players are and exist in that space, but as far as how much it actually impacts your gameplay, basically not at all.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a visual thing. And so, even after you figure out how all these systems work, or at least the systems that you actually need to engage with, then you also have the issue that World had, which is you cannot engage with other people's missions unless you've also completed them, which is so egregious to me because one of the fun things about playing Monster Hunter is discovering new monsters with someone. And the imperative that this creates is that in order to play with someone else, you need to have already done it, which means that you're already at an advantage state where you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And I think that is not only annoying as a player who's already done it, but also disenfranchising to the player who hasn't, because then it feels like they're going to get carried just by mechanically, systematically how this is set up.
So I did see some places where if you are literally in the same step of the story, you should be able to go on story quests together.
Oh, well, all is forgiven then.
But then because of the kind of quote unquote open nature of the game, you can't you can't like exist in that same story space until your friend catches up then. And at that point, I guess you can theoretically quest together for a while, but
Now,
it
you said
it's frustrating.
you said something there that is also part of my ugly list, and that's open world.
Hmm.
So, so I feel like there's a lot of contrary design choices for Wild in terms of how it engages with the space of what is, I think, quite literally the largest Monster Hunter environments that they've ever made. Right? You'd think that they put all this time into developing these environments. They want you to go out and explore it and familiarize yourself with it. Um, there's so many systems that say no, we don't actually want you to do that. And the first is the most obvious, and that's the sacred bird reptile mount thing that is
Hmm.
introduced in this entry. And I think we talked about it after we played the beta, but basically you get on a bird, you hit the up button on your D-pad, and it takes you to wherever you marked on the map. And I get it. I get it. Once you already know what you're trying to do, you want to get there and you want to do it. But again, as a veteran of the series, where you didn't even necessarily know where the monster was when you landed in a mission, like it just feels, I don't know, it feels a little soulless, if I'm being honest. Because like in Freedom Unite, one of the first games I played, like you land in a mission and then if you are well aware of how that mission works, the monster could be in one of like maybe 3 or 4 locations. And so you go and you search for it. And that's like the first real part of engagement in the game, is not just fighting the monster, but like finding out where it is. And in this game, you open a map and all the monsters are there, and you tap them and then you go there. I feel like there's so much streamlining that it's circumventing things that used to be gameplay, you know? And this is also true for traversal, and you can do this before you've even explored the map. You have the full map, you're given it completely. You don't even need to know like what an area looks like or what the most direct path is, because the game will do it for you.
This is one of the really weird pieces too, because when Rise came out and I sort of understood, like, having only come from World, hey, all the monsters being on the map, you can see them and just run to them, whatever, is a little strange. But in that one, you still actively had to move yourself to the monster, and they gave you the like spirit birds and stuff to collect on the way as like a, hey, do you want to give yourself some bonuses on the way to this monster? You still have to get there, but you had some agency in doing that. Whereas the Sacred really is like, all right, I launched the mission, I'm gonna hit up, I guess I'll look around and grab some free orbs on the way. But
Yeah,
like,
there you were incentivized each mission to actually do some traversal. Even if like you were completely familiar with the map or you didn't want to do any exploration, you still got some sort of like kickback from doing the going there.
mm-hmm. And there's
And
just none of that in this one.
there's just none of that. And it's not to say there aren't like little areas with resources that are like more dense or more rare. You know, they're still there on the map. In fact, you can see the resources themselves, and you can also pin yourself to them and have your bird take you there in the same exact way. And so it feels like they develop these really nice environments, these very large environments that aren't really open world, but are about as open world as it's gotten with Monster Hunter. And they're like, don't engage with this. And I think that that's clearly like two teams acting against each other. Um, and then there's also contradictory stuff to the idea of not engaging with the environment, because eventually you are kind of expected to engage with the environment, at least if you want to make the most of what I consider to be the worst food system in Monster Hunter. Um, First of all, let me just say, I miss Cat's cooking for me. Cat's cooking for you is some of the nicest things to happen between hunts. It's nice to just sit and watch the cutscene and then have them give you the food. It's like, this is nice. I
Yep.
miss that. Um, it's been replaced with a kind of on the fly cooking system where you have like your base item, which is, it just takes a ration, which of the rations, you don't need a whole lot of, like, you're basically handed them constantly, so it's not a big deal. The rations are easy, but every other ingredient is also limited. Like, you can't just have it and use it every time. You have to go out and actually get it. And the two ways that you get these ingredients are, one, you get a bunch of resources that you can trade to villagers, which then will trade you for the ingredients, or you go out and you get the ingredients, which makes it seem like, well, why would I bother trading if I can just get the ingredients? To which I say, yeah, why would you do that? And then the other part is like, okay, well, now you do want me to engage with these environments and go out and farm things, even though it seems like everything else is trying to streamline the game, right? And it's just like, okay, well, that seems counterintuitive. I don't like the cooking system.
I I will admit I don't mind the cooking system. I think there are some benefits to this one. I agree with you in the way it wants you to engage with it, and I agree with you in not having a fun cutscene to watch. It's kind of a bland, boring one in this one. But I do think it splits a pretty good middle ground between the Dongo system from Rise and the system I pretty much just didn't look at and just always did Chef's Choice in World because there was just so much to do there. I was like, I don't want to. I just don't care. Um,
Yeah,
it
but
splits a
what
good difference there that I think is good, and because the game is trying to do that little bit more open nature to it, I'm happy to see that the buffs are time based rather than just single hunt. Go cook and go on a hunt. Like I do think that is a good and smart change that does support the changes to the game.
sure, that part does, but I just think that the main issue for me is that in Monster Hunter World and Rise, the two other games that you played,
Mm-hmm.
you unlock an ingredient and then you have that ingredient. You don't have to worry about
Yeah,
going and gathering it.
totally.
It's just there at the canteen, and you say, I'd like to use that to make my meal. And they don't check to see if you have enough. You just have it.
Yeah.
And for a game that is trying to be so streamlined, the idea of having the game try and disengage you from exploration and farming and all of these other tenets that used to be a part of Monster Hunter, for them to be like, well, for this, we want you to go out and pick things off the ground. It's just like, why this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Um, I'm a little surprised the thing you have brought up has, or the things you've been bringing up have not been kind of my biggest beef,
Yeah.
other than the
Well,
multiplayer.
listen, I love the game. I'm planning on playing the game all the way through, engaging
Mm-hmm.
with all the content. It's it's not living up to the hype that it was presenting.
Yeah, my biggest beef, other than the multiplayer, my God, that low rank story. Not the
Yeah,
narrative, but the story progression and mission structure.
it's okay, so it's not even the story for me, it's the way they decided to tell it and the characters who are engaged in it.
Yeah,
Like
and
I think the core of the story is fine. I think that all the NPCs that they were showcasing aren't like maybe half note, not even one note in their personalities. They're like half note. Except for Nada, and even Nada is just kind of annoying to me and just the sheer lack of logic that the kid has. And then the times where he does seem like salient and like he's going to do something more profound, it's just kind of like sidestepped.
yeah, the like every time he's about to have some agency, he doesn't have agency anymore because the story
Yeah.
says, "Oh no, we want to hunt this actually."
Yeah, and again, I think that this is a game that's being given to a much more mainstream audience, and I think this is a very Western way of dealing with it, trying to add a lot of context and make sense of what you're doing in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the Monster Hunter games, they didn't really bother explaining why you're going out and beating up all these monsters. It's just assumed like, yeah, the monsters are attacking humans, whatever. Let's go beat up the monsters. Um, and in this game, it's tied to some. This is the other problem, Neil. I can't even handle one problem without talking about another. But yeah, before I move on, let me just say I completely agree with you. I think that it none of it feels deep. I guess.
Well, even then, because I don't care that much about the narrative. Like that's not even the issue I had so much with it. It was the like mission structure and the way that they have this big open world, and almost every single mission you go on says, "Hey, here's 10 to 15 minutes of people talking to you and being forced to walk or watch a cutscene where you cannot stray from the path and like pick up these items if you are a collector who wants to
Okay.
grab these things we're going to make you get." Like it was the actual low rank took me a really long time to get through, specifically because I didn't want to engage with the story progression because I knew it would mean I don't get to play the game for who knows how long.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
And
was
again,
so frustrating.
this specific example, you get pretty early on a side mission from a guy who's like, "Hey, I want you to capture some endemic life with your net," and you're like, "Chill, I can do this while I'm being forced to walk around," right? And so you equip the net, and you're like looking for little critters while you're ignoring whatever the characters are saying, and like you have it equipped, and you're like holding your little aim button, and you're about to shoot it, and it's just not firing, and you're like, "Why is it not firing?" And then you realize you were asked a question and you're expected to respond to it. And it has seized control of everything else until you make some sort of reply. And so you hastily answer whatever the first thing is because you just want to get through the menu. And by the time that you finish having your little conversation, the animal's gone and you no longer have the ability to capture it. And it's just like, well, that's not fun.
No, it's super annoying.
Especially when just the dialogue choices in general. It's like, why are you adding dialogue choices to the Monster Hunter game? None of them actually impact anything. This is
the dialogue
it's just
stuff
so
is
asinine.
the dialogue stuff is especially silly in the times where it like lights up yellow ones that are like, "Oh, you have to do these," or like, "These are the big responses." But you literally have to do all of them, so why not just have them talk through it?
Yeah. It's just
you don't
need my input.
any of these.
You do not need my input for this. Just do it. I get that you had more dialogue than normal, but you don't need to like remind me that I'm playing a video game until the video game is actually being played again.
And lastly,
no, not lastly. I got a lot more.
Lastly, involving dialogue.
Okay.
They don't have Monster Hunter language in this one.
That was a big annoying one for me.
Which look, they're trying to make it mainstream. People like their games to have people speaking a language they understand. I get that. I also really have like a disconnect in the whimsy of Monster Hunter and having them speak a bunch of like, "Ooh, we're serious about what's happening" in English. It just doesn't, it clashes for me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think, yeah, I mean, I can live without it. I would have really liked to have it in there, just because it's been in every other Monster Hunter game I've ever played. It just feels like an unnecessary departure when you've already voiced the game in like 9 real languages. Why can't you just do the stupid fake language for me, please? So to circle back to the characters,
sure.
Did you like any of them in particular, Neil?
I like Gemma.
Why?
She's cool.
She's not cool, Neil.
She's the blacksmith. She has a couple of moments in the story where you can talk to her and she says some stuff about like, "Hey, it's really nice being on this mission with you" and stuff. She seems friendly and has a little bit of like personality compared to half of the rest of the people in the game.
I disagree. I feel like she also had no personality. I don't know if I like being on this team with you is personality. I think that's a lack of personality. Okay, so I'm just gonna go down the list. You have Alma, who is kind of like the handler from World, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's a researcher. She's there to support in terms of like, you know, giving you information. She has one point where one of the Wudwuds tries to take a relic from her tent, and she kind of like goes berserk over it. I'm like, oh wow, we're finally going to get to see her like be her own character. And then that whole thing doesn't amount to anything. Like she never, you know, talks about any of her things, how, you know, she says that it was precious to her, but she doesn't explain why. And then eventually she just kind of fades into the background as a character who's sensitive, and her trait is that she's sensitive. She's always on the verge of tears whenever an emotional moment happens. And I'm like, okay, well, that's stupid. And you have Gemma, who suffers from quirkiness. She's got all the Disney princess quirky issues, except that hers is she likes mechanical things. And generally, whenever that comes up, it's used as a way to get her out of the scene, so you don't have to have her in the scene anymore. And then You have Olivia, who is part of another hunting team, and her character is nothing. She's earnest, I guess. And then there's who else? There's God, Werner. He's like a sociopath. He doesn't care about anybody else. And I guess Eric's thing is like he likes doing quirky science. Another quirky character. And then you have it's like Rove. Okay, Rove was probably the most interesting character, sadly, but they never expand on him. Like I was wondering about like what his deal was. Why is he so much more eloquent than the other Woodwoods? You know, why was he out here? And it's just his thing is he's mysterious, I guess. The most built character in the whole fucking game is Fabius. And he's like the leader of the Monster Hunter Guild, and you see him in the opening cutscene and at the end of Low Rank. And he's like, yeah, I'm here now. And it's like, the only reason I have any attachment to him whatsoever is because I played Monster Hunter 4, and he was in Monster Hunter 4.
Fair. Fair.
So all these characters, they're like nothing characters. They're just there to talk and fill dialogue and, I guess, be endangered so that you have more of a reason to be hunting monsters. Like, I know that Eric, you know, he was attacked by a monster. Like, okay, well, here, now we have a reason to fight this thing. That's not just, we like to murder monsters. And they go to great lengths to try and do these mental gymnastics to explain, yeah, no, but this is good for the environment. We're killing all these monsters, it's good. Don't worry. But that's what it feels like. It's like there's a lot of hand-waving.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's especially egregious when Nata is, like, making the realization that, like, hey, you know, these monsters are kind of like me. This is really fucking sad. Like, we're going over this, that it's sad. And they're like, yeah, but if we don't, maybe bad things are going to happen. I better just kill it. And he's like, don't do it, please. And you're like, no, I'm gonna. And then you do. And then he kind of just gets over it. I was hoping he would hold it against you in some way. I was hoping that he would have some sort of...
He's gonna be a hunter.
No, now he's gonna hunt too.
Now.
Yep, now he wants to do it, and it's like, wow, okay. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. So I almost segued off of talking about the story earlier because you mentioned open world. And the open world, you know, like I said, it's sometimes it feels like they want you to engage with it. Sometimes it feels like they don't want you to engage with it. But towards the end of Low Rank, and kind of peppered throughout, you have these moments where the weather changes and it affects the entirety of the area, and it almost looks completely different. And it's like, wow, this is really interesting. I can't wait to see how this affects gameplay. It doesn't. It doesn't. It profoundly doesn't. Like, yes, sometimes the thunderbugs will become great thunderbugs, and they have like this other thing going on. But by and large, like, it doesn't really matter. The monsters don't act different. The terrain doesn't really change that much. It's just a nothing. It's a big nothing, and it was spilled so highly in what was going on in this game, and it kind of amounts to like not a lot.
I will say the weather thing, the most surprising part about it for me was the fact that all of the weather that you experience throughout Low Rank is the like drab, boring version of the weather, where the place looks the worst for all of the places.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how it starts out, and then like it will become cool right as you're leaving.
Yeah, which is a choice. Like,
yeah,
it's a little bit strange where it's like, oh, like you didn't want us to see like the vibrant, good-looking area the first time we come somewhere, maybe, and then it like gets messed up, and we want to fix it back again or something. Okay,
yeah,
sure.
And I guess the last thing that I really want to talk about that I was not happy with was just how much I felt like I was bullying all those low rank monsters. So, again, the map is big. It's a big map. I don't feel like I got to see monsters doing anything interesting with it. Like, at most, they would move one time, and then they would be dead. Like, I don't know if they engaged with the environment in more meaningful ways. I know that in terms of like how you engage with the environment in combat is literally you drop things on monsters. I was really hoping there would be more interesting ways that you interact with the environment to engage with monsters, but it really is you just drop things on them, and that's kind of annoying. But yeah, I just feel like I was absolutely not getting to see what the monsters actually are like because, like, I play Hammer. I'm in full disclosure, I play Hammer, so I was getting stuns. I also am a veteran, so I use flashbugs, I use traps. And then also there's this new system for wounding, which also staggers them. And there's also a system for, like, temporarily knocking them back with offset attacks. And there's so many times where, like, I just walloped the low rank monster to ever loving shit. And it didn't have a chance to. For me, I bet there's some monsters I didn't even see all of their moves, is how bad it was. So, I don't know. I don't know if that's a really great showcase. Low rank is when you're supposed to, like, get people engaged with the game and show them what it's all about. And maybe it's different for people who aren't as experienced. I think that's a detriment for Wilds. If you come in with a lot of experience with Monster Hunter, I feel like Wilds feels kind of insulting. And that's a shame.
I don't think I'd go that far with it, but I do agree the low rank feels meant to make sure anyone can get through it.
Everything, like, the dialogue went way too long, the gameplay went way too short. I felt like I was just destroying these things.
Agreed.
But listen, there are good things about this game, things that I really liked.
There are.
And, you know, I think that a lot of it can be improved on. Mm-hmm. We have title updates. I have not gone through high rank. I don't know what that's going to change, if it's going to change anything. But
I can say yes, it will, at least a little bit.
Okay, well, I did a little bit of hunting in high rank just to see, like, what diversity was like, and yeah, there's a lot more monsters that are actually available. But I think that's my first big 2 thumbs up for Wilds, is the diversity of monster design. One of the things I hated most about World was how many monsters were just dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so many, like, I think when you get to Rajang, you're kind of shocked that there's something that's not a dinosaur to fight. So, yeah, we have not only all the classic stuff, but we have a resurgence of the ape monsters, we have octopus monsters, and just generally the designs are very good. I really enjoyed all the new monsters. I think that they did enough with the old ones. And again, I think that the focus for Wilds was trying to satisfy newer players and also just highlighting the combat itself. And of course, one of the major components of what that combat is actually what you're fighting. So yeah. I think that in terms of design, they're great. I wish that they could live longer so I could actually see more of what they did.
Totally.
So yeah, I think that the variety is great. I know that it doesn't have as many monsters as a lot of other titles did at release. It hasn't bothered me. I haven't been grinding it out as much as I've played other Monster Hunter games, but yeah, I think that that's a really great thing. I do like the new systems. I do like Clash. I do like Offset. I
actually really like the wounding system a lot in general.
I think it lends to a lot of weapons that kind of got shorthanded in other games.
I think you're right on that, and I also feel like it is a way of thinking about the tenderizing stuff from World Iceborne that, frankly, is kind of why I feel like Iceborne might be a worse game than Base World in some ways. But it evolves it in a way that is a lot more natural with what's happening and gives a lot of the weapons a fun way to try to engage with the way that the focus system and wound system and everything pulls together to make something very engaging that all weapons can have fun with in this one.
Yeah. As far as how it plays into the other systems, I do think that the wound system is a sign that they don't want you to grind and farm as much as past games, because every time you break one, you get a material.
You sure
So
do.
you're getting a lot more materials a lot more quickly. And again, if that's what they're looking to do is streamline this game and like focus more on, making armor and getting back out into the field, then yeah, I think that they made a really strong decision there. And I appreciate it. I don't like having to repeat monsters over and over and over. Obviously, it's going to shorten the game just by merit of you're not grinding as much. But I mean, I can worry about that in high rank with ranking up. So I'll worry about that later. Um, and then I don't know, Neil. Is there anything in particular that you really liked about
I do
Wilds?
have some
That
positives. I have
good.
played all but three of the weapons, and while I do miss having a little more variety in the way I can engage with the weapon from how Rise did the switch skills and stuff, every single weapon that I've played with has a pretty fun way to use them now. Even if there's not as much variance in ways to use them as some past games. I really think that the way the dual blades especially have been implemented is a lot more fun than particularly in Worlds. Um, and I really like the way that the lance, being one of the most basic weapons, just feels extremely good in this one, despite being a very simple weapon. Um,
Have you seen the videos of the lance weapon being used against the octopus monsters where they just keep running into them? And like because there's no way for your model to slide off because of all the tentacles, you just keep hitting it over and over and over.
It's a good plan. I should do that sometime.
You should give it a shot.
I've mostly fought the octopus monsters with different weapons, but I should do the lance at
Sure.
some point. Um, I also must say I haven't spent a ton of time in high rank, but I know I have put more time into high rank than you did now because once I hit high rank and wasn't feeling like I didn't want to engage with progression anymore, which was happening to me in low rank, it felt a lot easier for me to engage with the game and start having the fun that I'm looking for. Um, there's still a couple of weird little hiccups. I was running around the forest today and the new apex there, Uthduna, showed up. And I'm not a high enough rank to start a quest to hunt it, but it won't stop me from hunting it. It is still in my world and let me do the hunt. Uh, and I will say, fighting a high rank Uthduna while underleveled with a underleveled weapon uh, felt really good, actually. The monster lasted like a half hour instead of like 7 minutes, and I had a fucking great time.
Okay. Um, did you recognize it was like doing anything? Was it more aggressive? Like some of the monsters, I feel like they just kind of sit there in low rank.
Um, I think it was a little more aggressive. It was hard for me to tell because the Uthduna fight in low rank, I feel like I just sort of
It's
my
pretty on
brain sort of
rails.
turned off and like it just sort of happened.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no, absolutely.
it definitely was hitting me really hard, and I was using a great sword, which I'm not used to using a lot of in this game. So I carded twice to it, which
Okay.
was like, oh, okay. Admittedly, I'm under level. Like my if I was at the level I'm supposed to be, maybe it still would have been too easy. Uh,
So when you say that you were too low level, I understand you're talking about like in terms of equipment,
mhm.
but also it would not let you activate the mission from hitting enough, right? Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
It literally put up a little message saying like you're too low rank to start this quest.
Okay.
But it was
And so
still
you
in the
don't get
world. I
credit.
could still hunt it. I could still get the materials from it. I can build its armor now. It's in my list to build, despite the
Okay.
fact that I cannot actually start a hunt for it.
Yeah. That was another weird thing, I think. Weapons have skills now attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this is not, it's another weird design choice, but they let you have more than one weapon when you're in the field. You can switch when you're on your bird, but the issue there is you can't change your armor in the field. So you'll have armor sets spec'd to a specific weapon, and then you'll switch to like your sub weapon, which is not that weapon that's supported by your armor, and obviously you're not going to have as great a time. So I don't know if like the intention was for you to use two of the same kind of weapon, or like if they were trying to offset that by using skills on weapons inherently, but I haven't gotten deep into the weapon trees, so I don't really know how much they can actually add in terms of what's intrinsic on the weapon itself. Have you seen anything that's like, oh yeah, you can get a max for this skill just from equipping this weapon?
I haven't seen anything maxed out on a weapon. I have seen that weapons start getting multiple skills and they get gem slots because they've just split up what can be on a weapon and what can be on armor.
Right. Okay.
I don't hate that system. It kind of means that like we're gonna see a little less homogenized, like everybody just runs weakness exploit and attack up on whatever they're doing, you know? So I don't
Right.
hate that. I do think that it does limit some of the weapon choices to me, where I'm going like, this gun lance is really cool looking, but it runs guard, and I don't want that skill.
Okay.
So I don't want
All
that
right.
weapon,
Well,
I guess.
let's get some closing thoughts on it for where we're at.
Hmm.
We're nearly like 3/4 in to the podcast.
We sure are.
Uh,
It's the Monster Hunter one. Y'all had to expect we were going to go hard on
yeah,
Monster Hunter.
yeah, of course. So I guess my closing thoughts are I really wish they did this like every other Monster Hunter where they had the story missions as the village missions and the hub missions as the stuff you do with multiplayer and just had it separate. Like there's some people who don't want to engage with the story and that's fine. Like there's certain things that are going to be locked by the story, but you can experience all of the different monsters and all of the things you can do in the Gathering Hub. And then that way, when the game comes out and you have a bunch of people who have already like played every other Monster Hunter, they can get to it. And then later when they feel like doing the story, they can just bulldoze it. It's not a big deal. But
Yeah.
apparently they really, really, really wanted you to go through the story because it's basically required before anything else really opens up.
Yeah. I It's weird because I actually went back and played a little bit of World this week.
Did you?
I did. Some of my other friends have decided to start getting into World, partly because they're afraid of spiders and so they don't want to play the new one. But partly because that's the one that's on sale and cheap for everybody. But I jumped in there and just played World a little bit and like have a little bit fresh in my mind about how World functioned. And because World was my first one, there's a big part of me that just loves that game. I put hundreds and hundreds of hours into that game. I think Wild is an improvement in a lot of ways. I think Rise is probably the best one of the three that have been released since World.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I
And
think
that's
that
to
you've kind of
say, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I think you've developed your taste of what you expect in a Monster Hunter game,
Mm,
and I respect it.
yeah, I really like some of the stuff they brought back because Rise took a lot out as well. But that is to say that like I would still call Wilds like an 8 out of 10. I'm not having a bad time. It's a very good game. I'm enjoying it a lot. I just really wish that the low rank story stuff was not what it is. That's kind of my biggest thing.
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things where like when they release the inevitable like G rank expansion for this game, part of me wants them to try and address a lot of the shortcomings, and part of me wants them to just ignore them and move on with their lives.
Hmm.
Like can you do enough with the characters that you put out there that I'll start to actually like them? Or should you just leave them behind and let me do what I want?
Yeah. Huh. Well, have you played anything other than Monster Hunter lately?
Actually I have. I mean, it's been a little bit. since the last podcast, and I've had time for about 3 separate games that I think are probably worth talking about. And we're probably
Okay.
going to go long because it has been a little bit. But
Yeah, tell
um,
me about them.
okay, well, the first game that I would like to talk about is Keep Driving. I don't know if you've seen anything about this game, but it's essentially a road trip simulator based heavily upon like the foundational gameplay loop of Oregon Trail. It's
Okay.
kind of a resource. It's kind of a resource management game, but it's set like in around the year 2000. So that kind of like sets a mood. And it's very much like an inventory management game because you have like the Resident Evil 4 attaché case style grid where you put all of the things that you're going to be taking with you in. And you start by yourself, but you can pick up hitchhikers, and they are randomly picked, and they all have their own personalities and their own things they like to comment on, and their own abilities to use whenever you encounter events on the road. And the events on the road kind of act like these little puzzles where the items that you have and the inherent skills of the characters you have in the car can be used to address different pieces of the event. So let's say um, a fallen tree. Okay, let's say that you encounter a fallen tree. Um, your car has different stats, or I guess just in general, the game gives your situation different stats, like your car's condition, the amount of gas you have, the amount of energy your character has, and the amount of money that you have. And so there's these different icons that appear based on the sort of event that you encounter, where you have to slot in items or abilities to kind of erase them until there is no longer any sort of icons left. It's a little puzzle game. It's not hard. It's not super engaging, but the thing that happens is if anything that you don't eliminate will lower the stat that is not addressed. So let's say the fallen tree has like 2 blue icons, 1 green icon, and a yellow icon. So you can use an item that is like set up where it can address the green and the blue icon that are adjacent to each other. But after you do that, if it turns over, you still have a blue icon and the yellow icon on there. And so you take, for the blue icon, 1 damage to your car, and for the yellow icon, you lose some money. It basically plays out like this as you move from town to town. Not all towns have all of the resources, so you kind of have to plan your trip, and it kind of dynamically gives you different goals. And the hitchhikers themselves have their own things that they want to do, and you can indulge them or not, and there's different rewards for different quests. For example, I picked up a guy who's a songwriter, and his downside was that I needed to make room for his guitar. He will not come with me without his guitar, obviously, so I have to like clear out space in the car so that his guitar fits. He has skills that add a icon onto the grid that when you pop it, it eliminates the icons next to them. So that's really good. But even as you level up your hitchhikers, they can get downsides with them. So it's almost like kind of like a Darkest Dungeon situation.
Yeah, I was
For
about to say
example,
that sounds a little Darkest Dungeony.
the songwriter, at a certain point, I had leveled him up, and he received a trait where if I don't use him in an encounter, he lowers my energy by 1. He doesn't like being ignored. He wants spotlight, and so if I don't use him in an encounter, then I take an energy damage. So
Hmm.
you have to manage all sorts of different things. Of course, you could fly solo if you wanted, but I think it would be very difficult.
I
You
imagine
also
so.
you have your own skill tree that you can add to, and there's different branches, and it's very dynamic. And I think the thing that the game really nails is the vibe. It feels road trippy, if that makes any sense. Um, it's been a while since I've been out on a very long road trip, but it's the idea of the soundtrack is super important, and like you
Hmm.
can find CDs as you visit stores, and it adds it to your collection. And you, if you are playing music, sometimes you get a bonus based on the music. It'll say like, "Oh, the stereo from your car is playing really loudly between turns," and then it adds a little icon, and then you can use that as an advantage. And the soundtrack itself is really great. I don't know if these are real bands that I just never heard of, or if they're all like made um, specifically for the game, but I'm just kind of flabbergasted that more people haven't seen this game. Like, if nothing else, you should check out the trailer if you've never heard of it. Keep Driving. Very highly recommended. I hope that they continue to build on it. Um, so far I've helped a convict escape prison, and I've gone to a music festival, and I've visited my dying grandma. All separate events and quests that are added. Like, I met a mechanic who said that he wanted to like change the car into something that's worth racing at a rally that's like across the state. And I'm like, well, that sounds interesting, but I don't have time to do that. I've had ones where like there's a gambler who's like he has a bunch of loan sharks chasing him, and he needs to get to a specific place. But like if you have him in your party, every night you rest, you might lose money because he borrows it without asking.
Oh boy,
There's just
that sounds pretty cool.
a lot of interesting, good writing. It has a very nice modern setting. There's just a lot going on with it, and I think that there's a lot of life left in it, even with all the playing that I've done. Highly recommend it.
Awesome. Before I had my birthday and left, I finished Nine Souls. I talked a bit about that on the podcast already. I was pretty positive on it, but I wanted to finish it before I gave my final feelings, mostly because of story reasons.
Okay.
Um, they more or less pull it off. I think that the story in games like Sonabi hit a little bit better for me, but they did a surprisingly good job with the story in this game, and the gameplay is fucking excellent. There's some of the most fun 2D boss fights. A couple of them are in that game, and they're absolutely incredible. Uh, excellent game. Nine Souls is super fucking good.
Okay. Well, I mean, how would you rank it with other Metroidvanias?
Um, I think the experience is a little bit more uh less consistent, I should say. It's a little less consistent than Metroid Dread, but overall it's around on par.
Okay. Well, I mean, I like Metroid Dread, so
Yeah. I had a really good time with it.
the setting's
Um
pretty unique too.
yeah, yeah. Uh Space cats from Crazy Planet. And a lot of
That's what they
Asian
should have.
influence.
That's what they should have called that game.
I think it would have been worse if that's what they called that game. Um But that's not the only game that I spent some time with. You talked about Keep Driving having really good writing. I played a game with some really good writing as well called Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. That first Citizen Sleeper game is really good. The writing is kind of a big part of it. These games are basically visual novels with a resource management, I guess, mini game attached to it, so to speak. The main way you engage with things in this game is you're rolling dice every cycle, they call it, and then you spend those dice to try to complete activities. If you have a 6, you're always going to get the positive outcome. If you have a 5, you might not get the positive outcome, but just a neutral one. And if you're putting like 1s or 2s in there, you have like a 50% chance of getting a negative outcome. Um,
So very much like the first one.
yes, very similar. They do a lot of things in this one to change it up, though. The first game is kind of very much about discovering the place where it is, and the structure of the game has you starting with a lot of pressure around your resource system that you basically are able to alleviate the longer you spend in this place and the more you forge these connections on this space station. That's not what they're doing with this one. With this one, they do a lot more to make sure that the friction remains throughout the game. And they don't give you the kind of off ramps that the first game did. The first game has a lot of points in the game where you can kind of choose, hey, I want this to be my ending. And the game will roll credits, it will finish, you'll get an ending, but you can stay on the station and the game will keep going. There's a new game. You're going to a bunch of different stations on your small ship throughout this belt of this part of the galaxy, and you're kind of being chased during this. And so you always have a clock before going to a new place that is ticking up, so you can't spend too much time in any one area. You have your own body breaking down. The more that whenever you roll a 1, you kind of lose a health on a dice. And when you lose 3 health on a dice, it goes away and you have to repair it. And you need resources for that. So it has a lot of systems to kind of maintain the pressures that the first game you eventually alleviate. And it doesn't have the off-ramps. This game is a lot more about building a crew and meeting new people and having them help you. Instead of building a life on a station, you're building a community on like a very small community, like a found family community. And it does a really good job of writing that out and having that play out as you progress through a little bit more of a directed story than the first game. But with a really satisfying and beautiful ending, I thought. So, fucking really, really good game. I liked it a lot.
So lived up to expectations.
It really did. I honestly kind of surpassed them a little bit. It was more engaging for longer. And beyond just the narrative part of it.
Yeah, I played a little bit of the first one. I wasn't as engaged in it as you were, but that's because I had a lot of other games I was playing at the time, and it was hard to focus. I feel like if I just sat down and grinded that game out, I'd probably have very similar feelings to you. I have some anxiety around crisis simulation in games like that, where, because, like, you could just have a really bad turn and end up in a really bad situation. I understand that, like, that's part of the appeal of, like, learning, like, trying to navigate that. But for me, that's safe scum territory, you know?
Yeah, I think these games, both of them, do a really good job of generally not making failure be an ending. This game has, like, these kind of missions you go out on that very much kind of cuts off some of your ways to repair yourself and stuff for a temporary amount of time. And I straight up failed one of those missions, and the narrative outcomes of that were still satisfying, and I continued the story. It was fine.
Okay.
But, I think that, like, that failure still, like, I was sitting there going, like, oh god, this is going so wrong. Like, just get a good outcome on one of these dice. Oh my god.
Right. That's because you're sympathetic to the character, which is the strength of the story, right?
Exactly.
Like, if you didn't feel that, then it meant that they weren't writing the character well enough. And generally speaking, like, when I'm not attached to a character, like, say with Dwarf Fortress, failure, quote unquote, is just another way of telling the story. And I think that that's the right philosophy to take when you're playing a game like that, even though it is still stressful. But yeah, there's a lot of good writing in games still, gotta say. Maybe not with AAA games.
yeah, I was gonna say mostly in indie spaces, but there is a lot of good writing out there.
I think that's kind of, it lends to the indie experience because you can tell much more cohesive stories when you have smaller teams that are more focused on achieving the same kind of, like, themes and outcomes with what their messaging is. I played 2 other games.
Yeah,
we're going to go a little long. So the first one was from last year, then it received a lot of accolades, and it is Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Ooh, you got around to that. Nice.
Yes. I'm not deep into it, but I'm at a point where it's starting to kind of bare its teeth and, like, show me, like, what the game's actually going to be like. And whoo boy, is there a lot in this game. I don't want to invoke The Witness because it's a very different game, but in terms of density, like, there's like the obvious puzzles, and then there's kind of the things lurking behind those puzzles. And, you know, I think it does a very good job of introducing it to you. And also, like, for the lack of direction the game gives, it also encourages, like, looking at things differently, because that's how you progress. And at first I was terrified because it seemed like it was a very math-heavy puzzle thing. And don't get me wrong, there are math puzzles involved, but it becomes clear that it's not necessarily about, algebraic things or mathematics more than the relationship of numbers. There was a quote that I wrote down from very early in the game. You have a bunch of different papers basically that you can read, and they kind of tell you a little bit about what to expect. They talk about, uh, you know, they talk about knowing different time systems. Um, and this is just the quote that I wrote down.
Okay.
A
Okay.
strobogrammic number is a rotationally symmetric ambigram. That's the sentence.
Okay.
And, if you know maybe one or two of those words already, it's like, oh, okay, I can kind of figure that out. But I feel like there's probably people who read that and like, what the fuck is this game talking about?
Yeah, if I understand this correctly, that game is very much a puzzle game, right? Like a puzzle box you're
Yes.
kind of pulling apart, so to speak.
I think that a good comparison would be it's like Professor Layton meets The Witness meets just the general escape room kind of
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. Okay.
Um, and it's moody. It reminds me very much of the Suda 51 games without the toxic masculinity. Um, and like the game is very forefront. Like you're going to go into this not knowing anything. You're not going to know who your character is. You're not going to know what you're even trying to find out. That's part of the puzzle. So have at it. Learn about the narrative. Here's a bunch of numbers you're going to see over and over. Like 1963 keeps coming up over and over, and so does 2014. And the recursion of these numbers, I can tell, like the game is trying to communicate something. It's just I haven't learned the language well enough to really derive what's being said. And that's cool because I know
Yeah.
that there's something more there, and I know that there's going to be a payoff. I hope there's going to be a payoff because if there's not, I'm going to sound stupid right now.
I've heard good things about that game, so I would expect there's a payoff.
Yeah. And then lastly, the other game that I've been playing is Thousand Times Resist. I had to look up from the developer how to say that correctly. That is that is the developer sanctioned way of saying the title, Thousand Times Resist. This is a game you got me. I
Yeah,
didn't know anything about this game. What did you know about this game when you got it for me?
um I knew that there were people who I heard talk about that game as the best narrative of last year. I know that it is very story driven. I don't really know what the gameplay part of it is. I do know that it's not super long, which is, as people with limited time, I was like, let's get you this one instead of Metaphor Read Fantasio, because I know that game's like 100 hours. Let's get you something that's more like 10 or 15.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that. I'm not that deep into it. I think there's 5 chapters based on my glancing at the achievements,
Mm,
but um, again, to try and derive some sort of comparison to this game, at least one that you'll understand, it's kind of like Anodyne 2 meets Persona in terms of the
interesting. Anodyne
storytelling.
2 is not what I would have expected there. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't want to spoil too much, but like this is all like chapter 1 stuff,
Yeah,
so I
I
mean,
know
bear with
some of the
me.
base premise of it being what is it, like a pandemic or plague or something takes out most of the world?
Yeah, so some like you learn that there was a disease that was wiping out most of the world and that you are a clone of a girl that seemed to be immune
Yeah.
to that strain of virus or infection, but they've linked the infection to these strange alien creatures called occupants.
Mm.
And so the occupants, you don't really know a lot about them, at least as deep as I am in the game. But you're as a clone of this girl, you are given the ability to kind of dive into these archives of her memories. And so each clone of Iris, that's the name of the girl. She eventually becomes known as the All Mother because she's the mother of all of these clones. Um, but they're all given a specific purpose, and the character you're playing as is a Watcher. And I don't know what the significance of that is, but you are expected to go into these memories and kind of experience them for yourself. And the way that you do that is it's called a communion. So you go into these communions and you use your ability to shift time. And that's the main gameplay mechanic, is that you do traversal by shifting time. Like, for example, like in a time period, like in a specific date, there might be someone blocking a door for some reason, so you can shift time back to when they wouldn't have been there, go into the room, and then shift time back forward.
Okay.
And this time shifting is both the technique for getting and solving puzzles, but also for learning about the story from like almost like a detective. You're kind of like a detective. I don't know why I'm like a detective. It's just every time that it comes up, she says that it's her purpose. That's her function.
Interesting.
But pretty early on, you start to realize that maybe Iris, and who is eventually known as the All Mother, isn't as nice as you would expect, considering how much they talk about her benevolently, all of these clones. And then you have a moment where a rogue clone, who is a fixer, it's a different function that clones are given, has managed to unearth suppressed memories. And the suppressed memories are almost like little horror sections. And there's a lot of trauma, and there's a lot of heavier themes. And I think that they handle it very well, both in terms of how it relates to gameplay and how it's depicted. But this is not just a game about the game. This is a game about race. This is a game about Hong Kong's relationship to China. This is a game about COVID. There's a lot going on here. But it's all told in the backbone of a clone going through the original person's memories. And it's really weird, and somehow they're like keeping it together. It sounds like it's a lot of different directions, but it's all very cohesive, strangely enough. And that's difficult to pull off, and if people are saying this was one of the best narratives of 2024, I can see how that would be the case. And again, not that deep into it, but I'm kind of, listen, if I wasn't doing the podcast tonight, I'd still be playing it. I'll just say that.
That's awesome to hear. I really look forward to hearing some more about this on the next one.
It's kind of painful to have certain threads pointing in a certain direction and have them unresolved in my brain.
That sounds like some fucking excellent writing. We have played some games with excellent writing, it sounds like.
Yes, I almost played Little Kitty Big City instead. Because after playing one of them, I was like, that was pretty heavy compared to like what I would normally consume. Maybe I'll play Little Kitty Big City. But I'll go ahead and hold off on that one for a little while so I can work through these other ones.
Awesome.
But yes, really great writing from 2024. It's a shame, because I do play these games and I'm like, that probably would have been on the list for Game of the Year somewhere.
Oh yeah, the Nine Souls would have been. I would have definitely been saying this needs to be in the top 10. Had I been deep enough into it to feel confident about that at this point.
For clarity's sake, Keep Driving is from this year, and so is Wilds, obviously. Yeah. But the other games I played were from
Citizen Sleeper 2.
Yeah. So, a lot of games I've been up to. Yeah. The thing is, like, I drop off of games, Neil. You know this. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'll do a podcast, and I'll, like, say, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll be able to tell you more next time, and sometimes I never talk about the game again. But I feel like these are games that it would be a disservice to my brain to not continue them. So we are coming up in the warmer season. I tend to have other things that I get up to, but as long as I don't add too much to my plate, They'll definitely get done. They might both be done by the next time we record, but I make
Yeah,
no promises.
that's fair. That's
You
fair.
want to
We
hit?
both are
You want to
probably
hit?
going to play a lot more Monster Hunter, so who knows how much time we'll have for other stuff.
Yeah. You want to hit news real quick?
I mean, it's all depressing, but yeah, let me just talk a little bit about what happened in the last month, I guess.
I mean, it's not all depressing. I have things I could say that aren't depressing, but yeah,
Fair.
let's go
I
ahead.
will do a couple of unfortunate pieces of news real quick. Um, Monolith Studios really recently got shut down, along with a few other studios under Warner Brothers purview. Monolith, for those of you who may not remember, were the people behind those Lord of the Rings games from a while back. What were those ones called? I remember you liked them a lot with the Nemesis system in them.
That was Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War.
Yes. So the studio behind those games got shut down. Along with there was like a Wonder Woman game that is getting canceled and had been announced years and years ago under one of these studios. So
Yeah.
that sucks. And also, uh, in a kind of surprising piece of news, especially given some of the oh, well, Concord did so bad, so I guess it makes sense why their studio might have been shut down. Uh, Marvel Rivals has done really, 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 really good. Um,
Yeah.
it is also a game primarily made by NetEase, which is not an American company. But there were a bunch of American people at a studio here in the States that did a lot of work on that game. And they were also let go, despite how wildly successful that game was. So I guess if you're in the game industry, whether or not your game does well, you might be on the chopping block still, and that fucking sucks.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I think it says a lot about the state of the industry when a game can do well, and then you're like, okay, it did well. Still time to trim that fat, and then it's like, I don't think you're really considering why the game did well when you're doing this.
Yeah, it
But
seems like a really boneheaded on one hand, like these people obviously had a lot to do with this game. Uh, Maybe keep them on board because it was so successful. They did something right. I don't know. I'm
I'm
not a corporation.
I yeah, no. I think that there's no real answering as to what the actual thought behind that was, but I think that NetEase did release a statement, right?
Yeah, their statement wasn't really directly about this, but apparently NetEase is, or rather the parent company of NetEase is doing a less foreign investment, and so there's a few other studios that people are looking at, going like, "Ooh, are these also going to get shut down for the same reason that the American ones behind Marvel Rivals did?" Just funding drying up.
Yeah, I'll look at this real quick. It says, we recently made a difficult decision to adjust Marvel Rivals development team structure for organizational reasons and to optimize development efficiency for the game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're saying, now that we've done this, we'll be able to make the game faster. We'll make more content faster, is what they're claiming this is about. I mean, listen, I understand that there might be like some communication things, just based on distance, maybe based on language as well. But, I don't feel reassured by this move.
Not at all.
Um, I don't know. I don't play Rivals that much to begin with, so I can't really say a whole lot about it. But it says here, like, we want to reassure our fan base that the core development team from all Rivals, continues to be led by producer Wei Kong Wu, and Guangyun Chen in Guangzhou, China, is still committed to exceptional experience. Well, I'm not surprised you didn't cut your highest level employees. You cut a studio that was contributing foreignly.
Yeah.
There's nothing surprising. That's like a nothing statement.
Yeah.
Oh well. Why did you get them involved in the first place if you didn't want to do? I don't know. It's stupid.
It is. It is. Tell me some happier news. I would love to hear
I
something a little more lighthearted.
I mean, I don't really necessarily have happy news. I have weird news.
Okay, tell me something weird.
Well, there's a Pokemon shaped Cheeto that sold for $88,000. Did you see that?
I just why
I first heard of.
why why is it when food looks like something else, people think it's worth money? I don't understand our world. It's like the
Um,
Jesus toast.
yeah, but is it blasphemous to compare the Jesus toast to the Cheeto Zard? I don't know.
I
I
don't
mean, I
know.
guess it's already kind of
Charizard was a lot of people's first Pokemon.
sure, but Christianity is a lot of people's active religion. So I don't know. Is it comparable? I don't know. I think that in general,
Did you say 8 million?
no, 88,000.
Okay.
Not...
Oh. Oh.
Bro, I'd be eating Cheetos right now if that was the case. Okay,
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
even
gonna
like
go
Cheetos.
invest in Cheetos, just try to find something that looks like a Pokemon. My God.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, what's the verification process? How do you know they didn't manufacture this Cheeto?
Here's my real question. How do you preserve that shit? Do they like encase it
Resin,
in
probably.
epoxy or something?
Yeah, probably epoxy resin, or I don't know. Maybe they don't. They just leave it up to the person who bought it to do it.
Ugh, that's gonna get all moldy and gross.
It's
Somebody spills
evolving,
water on it one
actually.
day and it just shrivels up into nothing.
Well, Charizard is weak to water. Everybody knows that.
Exactly. It's expected.
Yeah, that's a feature. Okay. Um, but yeah, there was the Pokemon Day stuff. Did you watch any of that?
I did not.
Not a big Pokemon guy. I get it.
I really was for so long. I have a favorite Pokemon. I could probably still list the first 101 or something, but I just haven't really felt like I've been able to engage in Pokemon for such a long time.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there when you said the first 101. It's 151 first of all,
You're
and
right. That's what I meant to say.
well, you didn't. So
It's slip of the tongue. We've been going
fake
long.
fake
It's fine.
fan,
That's me.
fake fan.
Fake fan.
Um, yeah, I mean, apparently they're still doing stuff with the whatchamacallit, the Dota clone, the MOBA. Do you
Oh,
play any of
really?
that
I haven't
still?
touched that in a long time either. Pokemon Unite.
Okay. Yes, I think that's what it's called. And they had some bonus little things for the trading card game Pocket Edition. They showed a lot of stuff for the new mainline Pokemon Legends game, and
Ooh.
it looks all right. It definitely looks like we're trying to get this out before the Switch 2 comes out, so we don't look bad. Haha. And then they announced Pokemon Champions, which is the cross-platform battle sim, and the idea of having anything Pokemon cross-platform is kind of weird because you normally think of like Game Freak as like a pocket company for Nintendo.
Sure.
But it's not like they're putting it on PlayStation or Xbox. It's going to be on mobile and Switch. But it's basically just like fighting Pokemon. It's all about the actual battling. I don't know how that interacts, like how you actually get the Pokemon, but they definitely were very much making it a thing about like, hey, listen, now you can do this across platforms. Buy it so that you spend money getting Pokemon. Um, Pokemon's still so popular, man. I don't get it.
They've just continued to make it so that there's always new Pokemon for a new generation, you know?
Yeah, but I feel like the most popular ones are still like not new ones.
That's just because
Like
we're old. I bet if we talk to
I don't
young people, they
listen.
would all have favorites that are like Gen. What are they
Listen,
on? 8 now?
I don't talk to younger people, like way younger, but I do talk to people younger than me, and they typically like have the same kind of favorites. Like I don't know. I've never met anyone who's like super into core fish or nose pass, you know.
There's got to be someone out there who absolutely loves Trubbish.
Uh, if you love Trubbish, please leave a comment on the video, and then you'll be seen and represented, and all one of you can finally face society with a brave face.
Well,
I think we were able to wrap it up now, and that we got to we said Trubbish. That was on my bingo card. Got to mark that off.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Did get a bingo.
You're welcome, everybody.
You're welcome, everybody.
For another excellent
You didn't deserve this, but we gave it to you anyway.
Podcast. I hope you have a wonderful night. Or day. I guess you could be listening to this in the middle of the day. I don't know you.
No one listens to this during the day.
Yeah, this is only for the night crowd.
Yeah, this is specifically to fall asleep to. You're welcome.
Audio Games is hosted and produced by Matthew Lane and Neil Jimenez. Our theme music is Recharging by Gooset. If you'd like to reach out to us, please email us at audiogamespodcast@gmail.com.
You're welcome. Why would you say that?
I don't know, man. We went long. Who knows where my brain goes?
Apparently to a very egotistical place.
Yeah, apparently.
I'm stopping the
All I
recording.
can think about is how cool I am.
Well, credit's due where it's due.